Good evening, viewers. We have news from the Middle East today as Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi was killed in a helicopter crash along with the foreign minister of Iran as well. Discussing the impact of Raisi's death on Middle East and on the global front, we have with us Shubhajit Roy, who is the diplomatic editor of the Indian Express. Shubhajit, welcome. My first question to you is what happens next now for Iran after Raisi's death?
The supreme leader is the most important actor in the Iranian establishment. So essentially, he heads a council which essentially is a self-appointed guardian of the democracy or their regime. So they will have to conduct elections in the next about 50 days, and that is the time frame in which they have to select or elect their new president. That is the formal procedure, and so we will see in the next 50 days, people putting up their candidature, and so people might put up the candidature, but they will have to be accepted by the Guardian Council, which is headed by the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei.
So now we have two spots which are void. What do you think will happen now?
What happens is, with his sudden demise, this leaves a vacuum in that sense in the president's place. What Ali Khamenei, the Supreme Leader, has to do now is to look for a president who is also a possible successor. But there can be two candidates as well. There may not be only one candidate, because so it's not usual that the Iranian president becomes the Iranian supreme leader, and there are two different positions. So Ali Khamenei will have to now look for a new president and also potentially a successor should something happen to him. So the name that is right now doing the rounds is his son, Ali Khamenei's son, Mujtaba Khamenei, who is said to be one of the possible contenders for the president's position.
It is this politics at play which will also decide on the nuclear program, because as we know, Raisi was someone who was uncompromising when it came to Iran's nuclear program. He was very much batting for Iran to be a nuclear power. So do you think the stance will change or depending upon who comes to power next?
Yes, it will, but the determinant factor for Iran's nuclear program will be who becomes the US president next. So the US presidential elections, they happen in November, and if Donald Trump becomes the US president again, then it is likely that he will again double down on Iran and its nuclear program. And that's where when Trump walked out, under Trump, the US walked out of the JCPOA. It posed a challenge to the authority of Hassan Rouhani at that point of time. And that's how the reformists really suffered and were defeated by the hardliners. Because the hardliners said that we told you so, that you couldn't trust the Americans. They would back down. We always told you that they will back out of the agreement, and they did finally. And that's how the Raisi and the hardline faction had an upper edge, and Ali Khamenei also sided with them, gave his blessings, as compared to the Rouhani's faction, which was the moderates or the reformists, as they're known as. So Iran's nuclear program will be dependent on how the next US president plays the diplomatic game. So far, US President Joe Biden has also not been able to sort of do a breakthrough with Iran on the nuclear deal. That's because of domestic compulsions, also because the hardliners under Raisi had started sort of there was a tough negotiating phase where they were not agreeing to a lot of the previous clauses that were already had been agreed and sealed in the previous regime. So there was a deadlock in the negotiations. So that's why right now the nuclear program, so far, as of now, if the ultra conservatives come to power, then they will double down on the nuclear program. But even if the moderates uh, somehow come to power, uh, even then they will find it hard to go back to the nuclear deal with the US and the other European powers.
What kind of a change we can see in the overall Iran's foreign policy?
So again, I would like to underline the fact that the most important player in Iran's system is the supreme leader. So, it will depend on who becomes the president, and the president will choose from his sort of loyalists, his group. One of them will become the foreign minister, and whoever will become the foreign minister will follow the line set by dictated by the conservatives or the reformist president. So it really depends which faction actually forms the government in the next election.
How do you think that diplomatic relations will with India, both diplomatic and trade relations with India, will have an impact now after Raisi's demise?
Well, India and Iran have a very, very old relationship, also historical civilization relationship. Both countries go back together millennia, millennia of interaction. In fact, Iran was very much sort of part of Akbar's empire. Persian was the court language of India, of in his court. So the languages are similar. Their sort of food is similar. There are a lot of commonalities there. In modern times, post-Indian independence, in 1950, the two sides signed a friendship treaty, and they have been having a diplomatic relations. They went through a rough patch, in the last 2 decades, especially because when India's relationship with the US was on a rise, India's proximity to the US, as it grew closer to the United States, uh, with the nuclear deal, signing of the nuclear deal, almost parallelly, Iran's nuclear program was revealed to be detrimental, and US assessed it as a detrimental, and Iran was portrayed by George W. Bush, the former US president, as an axis of evil. And so we have to so the relationship suffered on almost all major accounts, including trade. And the major good or commodity that India used to buy from Iran used to be the crude oil. And after President Donald Trump came to power, and he put sanctions on Iran, doubled down on them, the Indians were forced to sort of abandon this trade relationship, or oil buyer seller relationship completely. So since 2018, when the sanctions came to play, once again India could not do much of trade with them. But having said that, there are some strategic projects or strategic outlook that India and Iran share. One of them is stability of Afghanistan. So India, and Iran both share the same animosity or sort of antagonism towards the Taliban, which rules Afghanistan. And so that has been one of their main sort of similar, like-minded thinking, if you would like to say, between India and Iran. The Chabahar project port project, which was which has been developed by India, and now there's a 10-year long-term agreement that has been signed recently, and that is last week. That has also been one of the projects which is aimed at accessing Afghanistan along with Eurasia. So that is a strong element which has been implemented by both Iran and India, irrespective of change in government. So on the Indian side, the Chabahar port project, actually the discussion started when India was ruled by Atal Bihari Vajpayee in the Vajpayee era. Then Manmohan Singh government continued with it, and Modi government, Narendra Modi government also continued with the on the similarly on the Iranian side, from Khatmi to Ahmadinejad to Rouhani to Raisi, the entire chain of all the leaders, Iranian leaders, also have wanted the Chabahar port project. So it's a strategic project for India. So that is again an area where the two countries are cooperating.